Paradroid, released in 1985 for various systems. Paradroid is considered one of the greatest games of its time, and also for the 8-bit game era as well. The immersion is courtesy of the open-ended gameplay, which allows you to explore where you want to while you take over the droid by using a circuit-based minigame. At number 58 is another Pokemon game, Pokemon Red and Blue, which was released in 1996 for the Game Boy. This is one of the games that revolutionized the RPG genre and started one of the most recognizable and loved franchises ever, Pokemon. And here are a few reasons why. First off, the whole gotta catch 'em all concept is genius. It forced the player to explore every inch of the game itself to find every Pokemon they can find. Next is the train and battle system. This also makes the player to train their Pokemon to be faster and better, which gives them the sense of progression and achievement in the game. And finally, the turn-based combat, where you had to play strategically, figuring out what types and moveset would give you the best chance of winning a battle. BioShock, released in 2007, is a game that I will always love. I remember playing this game and staying up late and trying to beat this game in one shot. But here are some reasons why this game is on the list. Number 1. The innovative storytelling. Most games have a story told via cutscenes, but not BioShock. The story is completely woven into the game itself. Where you have to get the full story of the underwater city of Rapture, you have to find all the audio logs and talk to the NPCs. Next is the setting, which is truly brilliant. Being in a rundown underwater city of Rapture, to me this is an awesome aspect of the game, and what is going on in the background actually affects the game itself. You have to go straight, you're blocked by water coming in from some crash in the glass. Next up is the theme and philosophy of the game, which also makes the game a fun playthrough. In BioShock, Andrew Ryan's vision of an underwater city with no government and or religion interference seems like utopia, right? But is actually pure chaos. Let's not forget the memorable characters in the game. Before I mentioned Andrew Ryan, the wonderful creator of Rapture, to Sander Cohen, the deranged artist, and let's not forget the two characters that cause you to make a decision that affects the end of the game itself, Big Brothers and Little Sisters. Now in BioShock, you can learn different abilities with plasmids. However, the only way to actually get them is to pay for them with atoms, which can only be obtained by harvesting Little Sisters, which you find after you take out a Big Brother. However, if you want the good ending, you have to set every Little Sister free in the game, versus the bad ending where you harvest them all for the atom. BioShock to me is so good that the other two sequels are just as good. In BioShock 2, you play as a Big Brother, and in BioShock Infinite, it takes the whole story of Utopian City to a whole new level with Columbia. I could go into how all three games connect, but that's for an entirely different video altogether. Dungeon Master, released in 1987 for the Atari ST. Dungeon Master is one of the best dungeon crawlers around, and here are some reasons why. The real-time combat and exploration made it engaging to play, as you had to think quick on dealing with enemies and to solve puzzles. Dungeon Master uses a grid-based inventory system, which made it easier to manage items and spells. And let's mention the spellcasting system. In most RPG games, spells were just one type. Fire spells cast fire, base attacks, but not in Dungeon Master. Here you have the combat runes that create spells, which allow the player to create unique and innovative spells. Jet Set Willy, released in 1984 for various systems, is a game that I have never played, but what makes it one of the 100 greatest games of all time? Well, here's a list. The game is extremely challenging, where you have to try and avoid obstacles, which adds a layer of challenge that keeps the player invested in the gameplay. Another part is the open-ended exploration. This allows the player to explore interconnected worlds, which was ahead of its time. The mechanic allows the player to explore all over each world, which was not heard of in any other platformer at the time. And finally, Jet Set Willy is a technical achievement for its time, since it was made for the ZX Spectrum. Jet Set Willy pushed the system to its absolute limits with detailed level design and smooth scrolling gameplay. Counter-Strike, released in 2000 for the PCs. Now, Counter-Strike was one of the first FPS games with multiplayer, and here are some other reasons that make this game great. Counter-Strike is not your typical FPS game. Instead of just going out blazing, Here, you have to manage your team by communicating to them what you want them to do. And lastly, this game has absolutely no overpowered weapons. Though in most first-person shooter games, there is always a weapon that is way too overpowered that makes the game totally one-sided and unfair. Not in Counter-Strike. Here you have weapons that are not overpowered and are equally competitive. Shadow of the Colossus was released in 2005 for the PlayStation 2. Now, Shadow of the Colossus is a game that transcends traditional gameplay. It's more than a quest to defeat monsters, it's exploration of isolation, awe, and the consequences of your actions. Shadow of the Colossus begins with a simple, almost meaningless concept. A lone hero, a desolate world, and 16 giant beings known as the Colossi. The world feels almost empty with no towns, NPCs, or distractions. It's a world where the only goal is to hunt down and defeat these colossal creatures. The Colossi themselves are a marvel of design and scale. They aren't just a simple boss battles. They are encounters with nature itself, immersive, awe-inspiring, and absolutely terrifying. I love this game. It's an experiment of isolation and overcoming the impossible. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, which was released in 2003 for the absolute original Xbox. This is by far one of my favorite Star Wars games of all time. The concept reminds me of Mass Effect 2, or as Mass Effect 2 reminds me of Knights of the Old Republic. Anyway, in this game you play as a Jedi who travels the universe, and you have to make choices that eventually dictate what side you'll end up on. Make choices that the light will not approve and you'll end up on the dark side, and vice versa. I would love to play this game again, and also play its sequel as well, Knights of the Old Republic 2. Sensible Soccer. Released in 1992 for various systems. First off, the gameplay, it's incredibly simple. You don't need complicated sets of controls to get into the action. One button is for passing and one button is for shooting. That's all you need. But the beauty is in the execution. This simply allows players to focus on the strategy and flow of the game, not in memorizing with tricky combos. Yet, the skill gap is clear. Mastering long passes, controlling the ball, and timing your shots requires practice. But anyone can jump in and have a good time right from the start. The pace of Sensible Soccer is another key factor. The game is fast, it's frantic, and it feels like you're always in the thick of it. Unlike some sports games that can feel slow and methodical, Sensible Soccer allows quick passes, rapid runs, and scoring within a second of getting the ball. This sense of speed makes the game feel alive. Each match is dynamic, each pass has a potential goal, and no lead is safe. Whether you're playing for 10 minutes or 2 hours, the game's pace never gets stale. Not to mention the top-down isometric camera views in Sensible Soccer were revolutionary at the time. The unique perspective allows you to see the entire pitch, giving you a sense of control and strategy that's often missing in more modern games with closer behind-the-player cameras. Doom 2 released in 1994 for the PCs. Now, I have to say this game is truly awesome and a great change to the Doom franchise earlier in its life cycle of the series altogether. Doom was in itself an influential, but a sequel was to me one of the best games around for the PC, so why is that? Well, first let's talk about weapons. Doom 2 is home to some of the most iconic firearms in the history, but no more so than its super shotgun. Oh yeah, you know the one. It's a double-barreled beast that turns demons into bloody chunks with a single pull of the trigger. Of course, no great shooter would be complete without a share of terrifying enemies, and Doom 2 introduces a variety of new monsters. First up is the Kaka Demon, a floating ball of flesh with one giant gaping mouth. And then there's the Acrotron, a spider-like machine that shoots deadly energy blasts. But the true star of Doom 2, you ask? Well, that's the Cyber Demon, of course. This towering rocket-launching monstrosity was a force to be reckoned with, testing players' skill and patience. Defeating it felt like a true accomplishment. What truly sets Doom 2 apart, though, is its level design, from the chaotic streets of the city to the twisted labyrinthine paths of the inmost den. Each level is crafted with care and attention to detail. The opening design of the levels allows for a sense of exploration, while also providing opportunities for players to be ambushed by swarms of demons. The levels are more than just arenas to fight in. They're full of secrets, hidden passages, and traps that keep the players on their toes. Every corner hides something new, rewarding curiosity with more ammo, health, or even enemies to fight. And then there's the multiplayer. Doom 2 wasn't just about playing solo, it laid the foundation for competitive gaming with its deathmatch mode. For the first time ever, players could join together, battling it out in arenas filled with weapons, power-ups, and plenty of chaos. Well, that wraps up the first 50 games in our countdown of 100 greatest video games of all time. There were some absolute classics in there, and we're only just scratching the surface. What do you think? Did your favorite make the list? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and if you're new around here, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next 50 games. And with that, I'm Professor Retro reminding you to keep your controllers powered up and your consoles turned on, and don't blow on your NES cartridge. And game on. Peace out and stay frosty.